Hi crafting family, welcome back to Victori's Creations. Vicki here, and I am so excited. Today we are going to create paper roses. I love flowers. Roses are probably my favorite. Check it out. How stinking cute is that, right? If you're excited as I am, you want to give this a go, super easy. Follow me to my crafting table and I'll show you how to do it. For today's project, we're going to need our cutting machine. I'm using the Cricut Explore Air 2. Going to need hot glue gun, spatula. That's to help get the cardstock off of the mat. You're going to need some type of tool to curl your project or your papers, the petals. Cardstock. Once you have your cardstock cut, this is what it'll look like. Brayer Tool to help keep the cardstock on the mat. And speaking of mat, you need your mat. I used a standard grip mat. I used my 12 by 24. It's better if you have the light grip mat because the cardstock does not stick. It sticks well to it, but it does not stick so well that it's hard to come off or that you tear your paper flowers getting it off, because that does happen. One of my flowers fell. Glue sticks for your glue gun, and that is it. So if you're ready to begin and you want to create this beautiful, easy to make rose, let's get started. Step 1, get the rose template number 2 by Pearl Paper Flowers. To get your rose template number 2, go to etsy.com/shop/Pearl Paper Flowers. Don't worry, I'll put the link below. At the time of this recording, her templates are 50% off of her already low prices. Locate her rose template number 2 paper flower. With her template, she gives you the choice to be able to make small, medium, and large roses. You have the option of clicking buy now, or if you're like me and you want to shop around, add it to your cart to purchase later. Once purchased, download the digital file to your computer. Choose where you want to save your file. It will come in a zipped folder, so you will need to unzip it. If you're on a Mac, all you need to do is open it up. If you are on a Windows PC, I believe all you have to do is double click it. Her file contains the PDF, DXF, PNG, and the SVG. So you have an option of cutting out on your Cricut, or you can cut out by hand. We will be using the Cricut. Step 2, preparing your paper flowers to be cut. Upload your template in Cricut Design Space. Click Browse. Locate your files, and because we are using our Cricut, you want the SVG file. Click the design you just uploaded and add it to your canvas. You'll notice when you add it to your canvas, you only have one petal, and you'll notice that the size is already predetermined. You can change your size by going up to your width and your height. Make sure when you change your size, you want to click on the lock icon so that the dimensions stay the same, so that you don't put your flower out of proportion. You can change the size of your flower to any size that you want. She does provide in her PDF a list of different sizes that you can use. I'm going with the 5.5 by 6.08 design. So I'm going to come up to the width. Remember, I'm keeping my lock closed. I'm changing these 5.002 to 5.5. And if you notice, the height changes also to 6.08, so it is already in proportion. Now, I'm going to need 6 petals. When you're creating this flower, you need 6 of these. So go over to the duplicate button. I'm going to duplicate twice. And the reason I duplicate twice is because I'm going to now duplicate all 3 by taking my mouse and dragging it across all 3 so they're all selected. Duplicate one more time, and now I have 6. Now you're ready for the next step. Step 3, cutting out your paper flower template. Now that we're ready to cut, we want to make sure that our correct machine is selected. I'm using the Cricut Explore Air 2. You can choose to save at this point. I like to save just in case something happens. All of my work is still here. Click Save. You can add to a collection and click Make It. From here, Cricut Design Space has already determined the number of mats that you want to use. Now, because I want to have only one go through on my Cricut, I'm going to choose my 12 by 24 mat that puts everything on one. Now, because I do not have a cardstock that is actually 24 inches long, what I will do is take and move these around so that I have 12 here. So nothing in this little line here, I won't have anything there because that's where my seam for my cardstock will be. So I can move these around. It's the beauty of Design Space. You can move things around to get them exactly where you want them. And now I can add 2 pieces of cardstock on here on this one mat because this is where one is going to end and the other is going to begin. So I make sure there's nothing on this line, and that way it cuts smoothly. You can choose, if you don't have a 12 by 24, you can choose to arrange your flower petals so that you have 3 to a mat and you will only need 2 mats. Once you have everything the way you want it, click continue. Because I am cutting with cardstock, I'm going to choose cardstock for intricate cuts. I've always had luck with cutting using this selection. I like to click more. The next step will be to load your tools, which my tools was already loaded, your fine point blade, and it will tell you here if you need anything in clamp A, what you need in clamp B, and to load and press the load unload button. Once you load your tools and materials, you will press the load button and then you will press the Cricut button, the Cricut C. Step 4, prepping your petals. To prep your petals, you're going to want to curl the ends of your petals. To do this, you can use a variety of different objects. You can use your bone curler. I don't think that's exactly what that's called, but you can use this. You can use a pencil. You can use a marker as long as you have a smooth, steady edge on one side, or not edge, but end. Or if you're using or creating the bigger flowers, you can use an expo marker or one of the big thick markers. You'll want to have your petals separated into 3 piles. So I'm going to curl them into 3. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You're going to curl them the same way. So you can do them 1 at a time, or you can do them 2 at a time or 3 at a time. It doesn't really matter. It's just what you're comfortable with and what you can do. And you're just curling them in. If you don't like the shape of them, you can also use a pencil or another object, and you could just roll them. But you want to make sure you're rolling the sides, not the tops. There is a reason. Now that you have your petals curled, set 3 of your petals to the side, and you're going to work with 1 piece at a time. Each piece has 6 petals. This is the piece, and these are the petals. On the first petal, you're going to take and fold each petal in at the base where the circle starts and where the circle ends and the petal starts. We do this because the bottom must maintain a circle. You put them all together and you turn it upside down, you should have a circle. That is important. And by doing the crease here along the base, it helps you get that clean bend. Once you do enough of these, you may not have to do that anymore. Step 5, putting your paper flowers together. To begin putting your paper flowers together, you're going to take the petal or the piece that you crease along the circle or along the base, and you're going to pick 2 of the petals that are across from each other, and you're going to bring them in. Fold them into each other, not like this, but where 1 petal is on the inside and 1 petal is on the outside. Pull them together, fold them into each other so that you have a nice closed in circle at top, and you want to make sure that they are relatively centered. If you see that they're not, just take it apart because you haven't glued it together yet. And put it back. You can flip it over to make sure. While you're holding the pieces together, you'll want to glue, put a little bit of glue, hold it in place until it cools. And it's okay if it's a little off center, as every flower has its own personality. Again, hold it together. Give it just a second. If you don't give it that time to hold, it will come apart on you. Once it sets, take the next set, and you can do this one at a time, or you can do this two at a time. It's easier, in my opinion, to do it two at a time. You're not going to pull it all the way over like this because you need it to have a little bit of space. So you're going to give it that little bit of space in the top here, and you're going to glue the sides together like that. So put a little bit of glue on both sides. Hold it in place. Make sure you have that little bit of space. Uh-oh. I'm doing, uh-oh. You see that you've made a mistake, you can very gently pull the petals apart. It's definitely easier if the petals are not set yet, but because this is the center, you're not going to see it very well. I don't know if you saw that, but if you see the little crease right here, my petal did not come in like it was supposed to here. And that probably has something to do with that part. Because this is still the beginning, you can fix that easily. Don't push down on your petal, because when you push down like I was doing, that's when you get that little crease there. Keep your petal up, and if you have to, you can do one side at a time. Keep in mind, hot glue is, by its very name, hot. This will be covered. The beginning parts of your rose petals are the hardest. If you feel like it's not sticking, just add a little bit more glue. The next petal you put on should be the one opposite of the petal you just did, not the next one in row. The opposite. And again, you want to make sure you leave a little gap. You don't want it hugging up on that center piece. You want it to have a little bit of gap. Put some glue on both sides. Once you get this first piece in, after the initial set, everything else seems to be a little easier. It's just getting that first piece to set right. Now you want to do the next set the same way. Glue it, but make sure you have that space. It is important on this row that you go to the opposite ends. Don't go each petal in a line. You're crossing over. It gives it that clean look. Now take the last petal. Make sure that you're leaving, again, a little bit of space. Give it a second to set. Once you're done, you'll want to look at the back side and make sure that you have some kind of a resemblance of a circle. My circle's a little lopsided, but that's okay. You don't want it to be where each petal is hanging off. Take your next piece with the curled petals facing up. You're going to glue this to the bottom. Now, The best way to do this so that you're not gluing it where it's offset, because if it's offset, your petals aren't going to stick right. You want it to be, or your petals aren't going to go upright. So if this was offset, that petal would not come up the way it's supposed to be. So the best way to do this is put glue on the very bottom. And then very carefully place, and it doesn't matter the alignment of the petals. You just want to make sure that you're on the circle. And as you can see, you cannot tell that I had issues with the first petal, or should I say the third petal. Now, on this row and the third row, you're going to do it a little differently. You're going to do each row, or each petal, one petal at a time, like this, instead of crossing over. But when you do the first petal, you're not going to glue both sides. You're only going to glue one side. It doesn't matter which petal you decide to start with, but remember, only glue one. Make sure you're leaving that space, and make sure you give it time to set, otherwise it will come off. The next petal, you will glue both sides. And if you notice, when you do this, you get that little bit of a ridge, so to speak. You want to try to maintain that. So you're going to go to the next side, but this one, or the next petal, this one you're going to glue both sides. Remember to leave, I know I keep repeating it, but remember to leave that space. If you don't, it's going to look all bunched up, and you don't want that. This helps shape it, and it gets it ready for the big shape at the end, or as you get to these petals. You want to make sure your petal, your next petal, is not in the way of the current petal you're working on. Just slightly bend it back. Try not to bend it back too far, as you don't want to crease it. You can use the top of your flowers to hold onto with your thumb. Just make sure that you're not mashing down, because that way you don't mess up the petals. Make sure you're leaving that small gap. And if you're looking at your petal as you're creating, you can kind of see the form starting. Now that we are on the last petal, I'm going to show you why we left this flap open. You're going to take this petal, and it's going to go inside of this petal. This is a little tricky. You're going to put that just like that. Add your glue. Go in and make sure, make sure you're not pushing down on your petals so that you don't mess up that circle at the bottom. And now you're going to glue this side to here. Add your glue to the last petal, or the last side of the petal. I find it helpful to put my finger inside of here to make sure that I have that space. After each row, you want to make sure you look at your circle on the bottom to make sure that it is maintaining and that you don't have a petal that is out of shape. And if you do, now is the perfect time to kind of mash it in place. You're going to repeat the same process with this piece, with these petals. You're going to glue it to the bottom with the curls facing up, making sure that you're in the center. And you can see that just with the first 3 rows, our flower is starting to take shape. Now it's time to add the last 3 petals. These will be a little different. When we added the first 3 petals, we added them by placing the curled side up. This time, we're flipping it and the curled side will be down. So same concept. Add your glue. And making sure your curl side is facing down, so when you're looking at it from the bottom, the curls are up. Add your piece to the circle, making sure you are centered. Just like that. These 3 pieces will go on for the most part the same way. The only thing that will be different is the next row will actually go on a specific way, and I will show you. So let's get this piece put on. You're going to use 2 fingers underneath, 1 finger up top to kind of bring it in like this. And this is where the flare starts in. You're going to glue like this. And I know that kind of looks like the first row, but if you notice, it curls outwards instead of all in. Put a little glue on both sides this time. That will make a ridge on the back side, and you will use that for the remaining rows, for the, or not rows, but the other 2 pieces to know exactly where they should be glued. You see the ridge here forming. If you don't like the shape of your ridge, you're not going to be able to see it much, but you can take a pencil or a small circular object and put it right there. Go to the next side and you're going to do the same thing. The next petal, you're going to do the same thing on the next side. Finger in the center, bottom 2 fingers there, pull them up. Always make sure you're leaving space. You don't want them up against the previous petals. Give it time to cool. If your glue acts like it doesn't want to stick, that's not a problem. Just add a little bit more. Make sure you hold it in place until it dries, or until it cools. Go to the next petal. Repeat the process all the way around. If it seems like your petal is not wanting to stick with the amount of glue that you put on there, just add more. Hold it in place. a little higher up. And hold. With each piece that you put on with the petals, you'll notice that your flower becomes more and more like a rose. Just add a little bit more glue than what I was adding. Pinch and hold. Remember, don't let it fall all the way to the petal before it, so it's not flat. And if you're like me and you're using your fingernails to avoid the heat of the hot glue, give that extra second to set so it's not coming apart. It's the one positive, or one of the positives I should say, about having nails or getting your nails done. Although mine need to seriously need a makeover, or a redo I should say. Last one. And that one didn't set at all, but it's probably a good thing because I think I had it a little too close. How well your glue sets will also depend on the brand of glue sticks that you are using. And I want to say these glue sticks came from the Dollar Tree. They work, don't get me wrong, they work just fine. As you can see all around the mat here are flowers that I put together using these glue sticks, but sometimes they do take a little longer to set. This side is not wanting to set at all. I'm going to take off some of the excess glue. Add it back. Keep in mind it's hot. Very, very hot. It's okay if you can see a little bit of the glue on the outside of the petals on this row, because you're not really going to see that when we're once we get it done. And this is just a reminder that our crafts are not always going to come out 100% perfect every time. We are going to have those moments where things just don't seem to be going the way we want them. And that's okay, because if you keep working at it and keep trying, don't give up, don't get frustrated. As you can see, it does work out. Now, while the back side may not look very pretty right now compared to some of these, it's okay. Keep in mind, we have 2 more pieces to put on here. And I can assure you that as I was creating these, they didn't look as pretty on the back side either. So that's okay. Now, we're going to put the next set, or the next piece, on the same way. The curls have to be facing down. So you'll want to add your hot glue to the bottom. When you're looking at it from the bottom, your curls are facing up, but you also want to make sure that your petal goes between 2 ridges. So this is where you want to make sure you're not just willy-nilly putting it on there wherever. It has to go in between the ridges. The reason why you're doing that is because from here on out, when you fold it, and you put it up, you're gluing it to the ridges. This is where you're going to glue it to. So you're going to repeat the same process that you did for this last row, or the row before, making sure your petals are going on these ridges all the way around. Just like this. Make sure you give your glue time to set. Do not burn yourself. That glue is hot. Remember, you're doing 1 petal at a time. It's okay if your ridges are a little lopsided, because as long as your petal is right there at the ridge or where the ridge should be, you're good to go. Repeat this process all the way around. You want to make sure that you have enough space in between the previous row and the row you're working on. Keep your finger inside, and that helps you to get that space in between so it doesn't seem like it's laying right on top of the previous row. The more of these that you make, the better at this you will get. Just realized I put a Post-it note underneath this hot glue gun, but this one doesn't drip. I'm used to using the one I have at work when I need to glue something or hot glue something, and that one does drip, and I didn't want anything dripping on, or any hot glue dripping on my mat, so I put a Post-it note underneath it, and I didn't need it. Now that this row is done, you can see the ridges a little bit more. Yes, some of mine are a little crooked. And as you can see, your petals are really taking shape. It's really coming together. So last row is going to be just like the previous row. You want to make sure your curls are facing down. So when you're gluing it from the bottom, and you can see my nice little circle there, when you're gluing it from the bottom, the curls will be facing you. Make sure that your petals are where they're in between two of the previous petals. You want to also make sure that your circle is in the center. Mine was off a little bit, and while it probably wouldn't have hurt it, I want to keep it in the center. So just add some more glue, put it back, make sure, oh, that's warm. Make sure not only is it centered, but your petals are still in between. Yep, that's a little warm to the touch. And pick a petal. And I also like for this row, that glue kind of seeped out a little bit, to go ahead and bend. I bend them back a little bit to make it a little bit easier. I don't know if you've noticed, I was doing that with the previous row. With each petal, it's not necessary, but it did make it a little bit easier. It also made it easier to get the next petal out of the way while I was working on the one. Add your glue. And remember to keep them on the ridge. Keep your finger in the center so that it helps your petal kind of flare out. Give it a second to set. Go to the next petal and repeat the process. Ooh, almost dropped it. Repeat the process all the way around. Remember, it's okay what the back of it looks like, because really and truly, everyone's going to see the front. Unless you're just showing it off, no one is going to see the back side. When you're done, fix any of the petals that you might have bent inward, and voila, you've created yourself a beautiful rose. I really hope that you enjoyed putting together this easy to do paper flower. Pearl really knew what she was doing when she created this template, and I am very glad that she did. I cannot wait to make more and to decorate my classroom and maybe my office. I would love to know what kind of roses or flowers you like creating. Comment below. Tell me the biggest rose or flower that you have created using cardstock or any other kind of paper. Until next time, remember to always keep crafting your best life.